Hello learners and welcome to this program. Today I'll be talking about BPCG-175, that is a course in BA General program which is titled as Psychology for Living. Myself, Professor Swati Patra from the Discipline of Psychology, School of Social Sciences, IGNOU, New Delhi. When we are talking about BPCG-175, as I said, this is a course, it is a part of the BA General program. And this course is in your 5th semester. As you must be knowing that this BAG program, it was launched in July 2019. It has started from July 2019 and this particular course, that is BPCG 175, it is there in your 5th semester of BAG program. Now this particular course, BPCG 175, it is a 6 credit course and it is a generic elective course. Now when we say it is a 6 credit course, now since you are into the IGNOU system, you must be knowing about the credit system. Now 1 credit equals to 30 hours of study. Okay. So now it is a 6 credit course, this BPCG 175. So that means you have to devote 180 hours of study for completing this particular course. Now this course, it is part of 5th semester, so you have 6 months duration for completing this course. So during this 6 months duration of your 5th semester, you have to devote 180 hours for studying this particular course. Now this course BPCG 175 Psychology for Living, it has 5 blocks and within each block there are a total of 16 units are there. Now units are like chapters that we call as units. So in total you will be studying 16 units in this particular course, which is grouped under 5 different blocks. So now what are the objectives of this particular course? Now when I say the course is titled Psychology for Living, when you look at the title of this particular course, what are you understanding about it? It talks about the psychology for living. How do we live life? Okay. How do we lead our life? How one can make one's life meaningful, how one can make one's life productive, effective and satisfactory, gaining happiness out of the life that we have. So as the course title indicates, how we can use the knowledge of psychology, the psychological principles, the skills that we acquire by studying psychology, all these things, how we can use it in making our life better, in living a good life. So the essence of this particular course, that is Psychology for Living, is that it will help you in leading a better life, in leading an effective life, in leading a meaningful life. That is, in a nutshell, I can say that it is ultimately making our own lives better, okay, and leading our lives in a more peaceful and happy life. Okay. Now, coming to the specific objectives of this particular course, you see here, we talk about that gaining knowledge and about the psychological constructs that are important to lead a better life. Now, when we talk about using the psychological principles, psychological knowledge in our life so that we make our life better, it refers to different types of constructs, psychological constructs that are there that will help us in leading a better life. Now, when I say leading a better life, what does it mean? It refers to the concept of self. Ultimately, when we talk about our life, we have a perception, we have a sense of self about ourselves. What is this sense of self? And we also have an identity of ourselves. So this sense of self and how do we identify ourselves, how do we develop an identity about ourselves, various psychological constructs are there which influence this concept of self and concept of identity. And this makes our life better. If we develop a proper sense of self and a proper sense of identity, then that will help us in making our life better. So this particular course BPCG 175, it will help you gain knowledge and skills in understanding the concept of self and the concept of identity and the process of identity development. So all these things will help you in developing a proper sense about your own self, and then ultimately that will help you in enriching your own life. Apart from this objective, it also discusses the role of psychology in positive growth and well-being in human beings. What do we mean by positive growth and well-being? Ultimately, when we talk about psychology and we apply the psychological knowledge to our life, we talk about having positive growth. All of us pass through the different stages of development. Okay, we are born, then infancy, then childhood, then adolescence, adulthood, old age. All the different stages of development are there. And there is, at each stage of development, like we grow, we develop different characteristics. But what about positive growth and development? Whatever the growth and development is happening, does that go in the right direction? Do we have a positive growth and development? So, for example, if we talk about adolescence, during the adolescent stage, there are so many challenges and issues. So, our objective, our aim should be to direct them in a proper direction, move them in a proper direction so that they achieve proper growth and development. Okay. They are able to deal with the life challenges that they are going to face. They face during the adolescent stage and in future also. So this particular course, Psychology for Living, it will also help you in understanding what is positive growth and development and how we can achieve that, how we can make our life more effective and meaningful and achieve positive growth and development in our life. And that will ultimately contribute to your well-being. Okay, it will enhance our psychological well-being, it will enhance our mental health and well-being. One more objective here is that here in this particular course, you will learn about the application of psychology for living life effectively and meaningfully. So this already I have highlighted. So ultimately, from this particular course, when you go through the different units, the 16 units of this particular course, you will learn about the psychological principles, the psychological constructs, what do they mean, what are the characteristics of these constructs, and how we can apply these constructs to our life so that we achieve better state of living. Let us see the course structure of this particular course. As I said, this particular course has 5 blocks. Block 1, it is titled as Psychology and Self. Block 2 is Self and its Correlates. Block 3 is Self, Maladjustment and Mental Disorders. Block 4 is about Self and Positive Growth. And Block 5 is Role of Psychology in Positive Growth across the lifespan. Now, when you see the titles of each of these blocks, okay, and as I said, under each of these blocks, you have different units. Okay, that we will come to in a short while. But when you see the titles of these 5 blocks, you can see that we are focusing on the concept of self. What does it mean? Because basically, what you are the self that we emphasize upon. Okay, the self is the most important thing of our identity. So we need to focus on the concept of self and how do we develop an identity about that particular self, about ourselves. And how the psychology can play a role here in developing a better sense of ourself and a better sense of identity, and what are the different correlates of self that we need to know about so that we develop a better understanding about our own self. Okay. So now let us come to the first block, that is Psychology and Self. It consists of 3 units. These units are like your chapters. So 3 units or chapters are there in the first block, and the title of the first block is Psychology and Self. The 3 units, it consists of psychology and mind and body relationship. Unit 2 is self and identity development, and unit 3 is components of self. So in this first block, the focus is on the concept of self. Now, suppose if I ask you one question that how do you describe yourself? Okay. Now, many of you might say that I am so and so. You can tell about your name. You can tell about your what are you studying, or what are you doing currently, or where are you staying, or whether you are working or learning, or your place also you can say. Okay, so when I ask you about like describe about yourself or who are you, usually few things that we always say is about our name, about the course that we are doing, or about the job that we are doing, or about the place that we are staying. Okay, these are the few common things that usually come to our mind when we tell about ourselves. But the concept of self, when we talk about your self, is not limited to these aspects only. It is much broader than these few aspects. So what does that concept of self mean? What does it include? Okay, so in this particular block, in these 3 units, you will learn about that what do we mean by the concept of self. Okay, what does it include? Okay, it includes your other aspects also. Like for example, you can say what are you interested in doing. Okay, somebody might say I like to do drawing, or I like to do play basketball, or I like to play guitar. So these are the different aspects that are also a part of our own self. So when we talk about the self and how do we describe ourselves, this is important that we develop an understanding about our own self and the different components that are there as part of our own self. Okay. Now what are the components of self? Usually it consists of 3 components. One is self-concept, self-esteem and self-efficacy. Now when we talk about the components of self and we talk about self-concept, self-concept is what are there, the different aspects of ourself. Okay. What are the traits that we are having, what are the personality characteristics that we are having, what are the interests that we have, what are the skills that we have. Okay. So all these things constitute the self-concept. That is, how do I perceive myself. Okay. The perception about our own self, that is self-concept. Now self-esteem is also another component of self. I may be having these skills in me, but how do I value myself? Okay, so self-esteem refers to the value judgment, or the how do I judge myself, or how do I value myself? Okay, so that refers to the self-esteem. Okay, I may be having different good qualities, but I may not be viewing myself in a very good positive way. I may be viewing myself in a negative way. So self-esteem is the evaluative component of our own self. Okay. And the another main aspect of our self is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy refers to the belief that I can do something. Okay. So this belief in oneself, that again depends on what kind of self-concept we have, what kind of self-esteem we have. So together the self-concept, self-esteem and self-efficacy, these are the different components of our self, and these affect the development of the sense of self that we have and the development of identity that we have. Okay. So in this first block 1, you will be learning about all these things: the concept of self, the concept of identity, the process of identity development, what are the factors that affect our identity development, like the family environment, the relationship with family members, and other factors, other environmental factors that also affect our identity development. And you will also learn about the different important components of self, like self-concept, self-esteem and self-efficacy, how this affect or influence our sense of self. So what are the learning outcomes out of this block 1? If you see here, you will learn about the concept of self, and also you will learn about the different components, that is self-concept, self-esteem and self-efficacy. You will know about the process of identity development, and you will understand and analyze the relationship between our mind and body. Now when I said the concept of self and the identity development, there is always a relationship between our mind and our body, how our psychological processes or the psychological aspects affect our body. Okay. So there is an interaction between the mind and body. Okay. Because usually it is said that our body hears what our mind says. Okay. So your sense of self, your sense of identity also depends on this interaction between the mind and body. So about all these things you will learn from this block 1. Okay. Title of the block 2 is Self and its Correlates. Okay. Now when I say self and what are the correlates of it, because as I said there are different aspects which affect the development of self. Okay. So what are these psychological correlates or psychological constructs that affect the development of our self? So about those things you will be learning in the block 2. So this block 2 consists of 3 units. Unit 4 is about attitude, personality and thinking. Unit 5 is on emotions and motivation. Unit 6 is about problem solving, decision making and creativity. Now when you see the different units in this block 2, you will be able to understand that here we will be focusing about all these psychological variables that has an impact on the development of self. Okay, like attitude, personality, emotions, motivation, creativity, problem solving, all these things are part of our personality, are part of our sense of self. Okay, so this means that we definitely need to understand about these psychological constructs or psychological correlates of the concept of self. For example, usually we say that emotions if you are talking about or motivation if you are talking about, then we need to know how emotions influence our sense of self. Okay. Like for example, if you are not able to regulate our own emotions, then we may not be able to interact effectively with other persons. Or if you are not motivated properly, if you are not able to motivate our own self in studying or in doing a particular job or in doing any particular thing, okay, we will not be able to progress towards the goal that we want to achieve. So about the concept of emotion, the concept of motivation, attitude, personality, all these things affect our development of the sense of self. So in this particular block, that is block 2, you will be learning about all these correlates of self. So what are the learning outcomes from this block 2? You will learn about various psychological constructs related to the self. You will learn about what is attitude, what is personality, what is problem solving. So you will learn about their meaning, the nature of problem solving, the types of thinking. You will learn about, we have different types of thinking. When we say we are engaged in thinking, there are different types of thinking. There are convergent thinking, divergent thinking. So as you go through these units in this particular block, you will be learning about different types of thinking and how those types of thinking affect our sense of self. Similarly, you will learn about the different theories also related to emotion, motivation, and finally you will learn about enhancing. What are the strategies or what are the interventions that can be used to enhance our ability to regulate our emotions, to enhance our motivation, to engage in more effective problem solving or decision making or enhancing our creativity. So all these aspects definitely have an impact on our development of the sense of self, because self is an integral part of who we are. So definitely we need to focus on the concept of self, our sense of self and identity development, so that will help us in making our lives better. Now coming to the block 3, it focuses on self and maladjustment and mental disorders. This particular block consists of 2 units. One is self and maladjustment and the other is mental disorders. So till now in the previous 2 blocks you have learned about the self, identity development and the process, the factors that are affecting these self and identity. In this particular block you will be learning about how we sometimes we engage in maladaptive coping, we engage in maladaptive behavior, okay, and the kind of mental health related problems that we face, and sometimes it leads to different types of mental disorders also. So this particular block will focus on all those factors, like how stress is created, how do we deal with stress, how many times we face anxiety in our life, how do we engage in effective coping behavior so that the mental health related problems or challenges that we face, we are able to deal with it. And sometimes when these challenges become severe, that time mental disorders might occur. So here in this particular block, you will be learning about the different kinds of mental disorders also, their characteristic features, the clinical features, their causes, why they happen, what are the causes that lead to mental disorders, and also you will be learning about different kinds of interventions or psychotherapies that can be used to deal with these mental disorders. Okay. So the learning outcomes from this block 3 is that you will be learning about maladjustment. You will be learning about how maladjustment, that your inability to adjust with the day-to-day surroundings, that can affect your functioning effectively and can affect your mental health and well-being. Okay. So you will learn about how and when do you engage in faulty ways of coping. You will be able to identify them, and then you will be able to understand stress, and then you will be able to learn various strategies or interventions to manage stress and manage these mental health related challenges or difficulties that we face in our day-to-day life. And finally, you will be learning about the mental disorders and their features, causes and treatment. Now, moving ahead to the block 4, it is titled as Self and Positive Growth. Here there are 3 units. Unit 9 is Correlates of Mental Health and Well-being. Unit 10 is again Correlates of Mental Health and Well-being Part 2, and then Self in a Changing World. So the learning outcomes from this particular block, it is that you will be learning about the concept of mental health and well-being. In the earlier block, the focus was on mental disorders, the challenges and difficulties related to mental health. Here you will be learning about what do we mean by concept of mental health and how we can enhance our mental health. So it focuses on positive growth and well-being. Okay. So related to this, you will be learning about different positive psychological constructs like hope, optimism, resilience, happiness, gratitude, meaning in life, and then how these factors contribute to promoting our mental health and well-being. Okay. This block will focus on these concepts related to positive growth and well-being. Finally, in block 5, it is titled as Role of Psychology in Positive Growth Across Lifespan. So here at different stages of life, ranging from childhood, young age, then aging, adulthood and old age, what are the different factors that affect positive mental health and well-being, and how do you address those concerns and challenges. So how psychology can contribute to a positive growth and well-being during these different stages of life, because adolescence, old age and the youth stage, these are the very important stages of one's life where one is establishing oneself in one's career, in one's life and society. So what are the challenges that we face here? What kind of positive interventions we can employ to deal with those challenges, and how counseling can be used for promotion of our mental health and well-being. About all these things you will learn in block 5. So the learning outcomes from block 5, it will be using the principles of positive psychology for positive growth and optimal functioning, and you will be learning about positive interventions, how these can be used to improve resilience in children, to improve positive youth development and to aim at to achieve successful aging. Okay. So these are the learning outcomes from block 5. So if you have gone through your course material, you can see that the hard copy that you receive, okay, it covers all these units in your course. Now the features that are there in your SLM or self-learning materials, you will be finding self-assessment questions, you will be finding different activities given there. There are unit 10 questions also, keywords, references and suggested readings have been given. So while you are going through these units in your SLM, you can carry out the activities that are given, you can carry out the self-assessment exercises that are given, so that will help in enhancing your understanding of the particular course. Now here one more thing, that evaluation of this particular course, that we can say that your evaluation is continuous and comprehensive. So related to this particular course, you will have to do one assignment. Okay. That assignment is related to this particular course. It is uploaded on the website. You have to read through the course materials and accordingly you have to answer the assignments. Okay. And the comprehensive evaluation of this particular course, it will consist of the theory examination, that is term and examination at the end of your semester. To conclude, if you see this particular course, that is Psychology for Living, BPCG-175, this course will provide you the knowledge and understanding regarding your self and identity. Okay. Because that is the self and identity, that is the most important part that defines ourselves. Okay. And as part of this concept of self and identity development, you will be learning about the different psychological correlates that are like, for example, your attitude, personality, decision making, creativity, problem solving, and so on, which affect our concept of self and identity development. You will also learn about the concept of mental health, mental disorders, how these affect our sense of self and identity development. Okay. So finally, you will be learning about how to apply this psychological knowledge, principles, and the different positive psychological interventions to enhance our psychological well-being. So viewers, I hope you have been able to get a grasp of this particular course, and for any further query, you can always write to me on this email ID swatipatra@ignou.ac.in. Thank you.